In 2011, Professor Errol Waldron received Barbados' highest national honor. He was made a Knight of St. Andrew for, as the citation reads, his extraordinary achievement and merit in service to Barbados and humanity at large. For the significance of the work of the man we honor today far transcends the boundaries of any disciplinary, institutional, or national affiliation. The university is proud in its 50th year to name the Errol Waldron building in his honor, to ensure that while it recognizes that his contribution is Catholic in its dimensions, it claims its native son for posterity. Today's ceremony is part of our Golden Jubilee celebrations and a wider commemorative project in which we have already named a number of our monuments after persons who have made an enduring contribution to the development of our campus. We have honored former Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Leslie Robinson, the first person to take up the reins of principal at the then College of Arts and Sciences, after whom an area of the old administration block has been named, Sir Sidney Martin, who followed P.V.C. Robinson 1 year later in 1964 as the campus's first substantive principal, after whom we have named our main library, Sir Keith Hunt, whose name our newest Hall of Presidents proudly bears, and just yesterday, we named the building which houses most of the Faculty of Arts and General Studies after another stalwart, Sir Woodville Marshall. The unaccustomed frequency of these Cave Hill community gatherings has prompted one retiree who has attended them all to ask of me whether he should approach Wigot or the BWU to inquire whether his frequent dutiful presence on the campus, although extremely pleasurable, brings with it any additional benefits to which he should be sensitized. Errol Ricardo Waldron, known to those who know him and to many who take liberties as Mickey, returned to the QEH in 1965 as senior surgical registrar after stellar performances in his undergraduate training and internship in the UK, largely at Guy's Hospital Medical School, but also at London University. I happen to have encountered recently one of his nurses at that time and mentioned to her that we would be honoring Professor Waldron soon. The reaction of this elderly lady was fascinating. She was rhapsodic. "Oh, Jacqueline," she said, "he was so handsome, he was so fine." And that nose, he had a nose that could pick a chigger. So now, I know that Professor Waldron, as a surgeon, would have mastered many invasive techniques, but I suspect that that may be one for the record books. Sir Errol was appointed lecturer at the Mona campus in 1968, where he earned a rapid promotion to senior lecturer in 1971. I have searched with some industry, but unproductively, for some anecdote about his early pre-Lady Waldron days, until I thought in frustration, what manner of man is this of such monastic mien that his salad days are so unyielding? I was eventually slightly rewarded by one of my older siblings' glimpses of his talents as a host at events at which Dionysus and Bacchus might fleetingly appear. His contribution at Mona included his role in the reorganization of the system of care on surgical wards, and his enduring legacy includes the establishment of postgraduate programs in surgery in his faculty. Professor Waldron transferred to Barbados in 1974 with the mandate of strengthening the Eastern Caribbean medical scheme at the QEH. He quickly exceeded this mandate, earning in the process a rapid promotion to the rank of professor in 1977 in recognition of the distinction of his scholarly output. His leadership of the Faculty of Medical Sciences, subsequently renamed the School of Clinical Medicine and Research, included 15 years as head of the Department of Surgery and Pathology, a total of 20 years as vice dean or dean, including his 1-year stint as university dean, and 5 years as director of the school. This is, in retrospect, quite remarkable. He nurtured the development of continuing medical education programs, a standard of undergraduate teaching that had no need to genuflect to that offered at any other campus, and championed the development of postgraduate programs, especially in family medicine and emergency medicine. On his retirement in 2001, the then principal, Sir Keith Hunt, wrote to him as follows: "Among the many achievements on which you can reflect with pride, your success in guiding the development and the transformation of a nucleus of staff which constituted the Eastern Caribbean Medical Scheme into an efficient and dynamic faculty of medicine stands out. Had this development taken place within the geographical boundaries of the campus, it would still have been outstanding as a record of achievement. That your work environment was not controlled or directly managed by the campus threw up challenges which, in contrast with the working environment under which your colleagues labored, were massive." End of quote. When, in conferring a knighthood on Sir Errol, his contribution to humanity was cited, the reference was in part, I believe, to his role in spearheading the fight against the HIV/AIDS pandemic, a cause he fought frequently and in the face of some opprobrium, but with passion and compassion, tempered by his objectivity as a clinician and scientist. He was the first chairman of the National Advisory Commission on AIDS and represented the region on the Global AIDS Program. He has served as president of BAM, and repeatedly as chair of the Medical Council. Sir Errol was the first chairman of the Caribbean Accreditation Authority for Education in Medicine and was a long-serving scientific secretary of the Caribbean Health Research Council. In 2003, he was elected foundation president of the Caribbean College of Surgeons and is an honorary fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England. On the shoulders of this man now stands our evolved construct, our own Faculty of Medical Sciences, to which he gave seed for a gestation and birth some 7 years later under the leadership of his successor, Professor Henry Fraser, and championed by a determined and visionary principal. These facilities, which will now link Professor Waldron with our faculty in a most concrete way, we will now formally declare open today. They constitute the second part of those facilities required to enable the UE Cave Hill campus to deliver the full MBBS as an upgrade from the model of the old Eastern Caribbean Medical Scheme, that is, the 2-year clinical program. That scheme was originally designed to expand MONA's capacity to meet the needs of Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean for qualified medical doctors through training at such facilities as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the Port of Spain Hospital. Over the years, these arrangements had become financially unviable, as the original arrangement that a minimum number of students graduating from MONA, Part 1, I believe the number was 25, should transfer to Cave Hill fell into abeyance. With the decline of this number, on occasion to less than 10 and well below critical mass, the per capita economic cost had become increasingly prohibitive. As the students transferring were largely Barbadian, this burden was borne almost exclusively by the Barbados government, which met the economic cost. The launch of the medical program was predicated on a self-financing commercial loan of $25 million to be taken up and repaid by the Cave Hill campus from the sale of places. A portion of these funds would be used to build the new facilities at Cave Hill in proximity to the Faculty of Science and Technology for the delivery of basic medical sciences, and the remainder to be used to redevelop and equip totally unused or partially unused buildings at Jemmotts Lane under the control of the Ministry of Housing, and this for the teaching of the clinical skills part. And it was anticipated at the time that these facilities would comprise offices, labs, lecture rooms, and student accommodations. The buildings identified by the Barbados government were the old Nightingale Home, which is this one, which had previously housed nursing and medical students, and most recently refurbished as part of the emergency medical infrastructure for the World Cup, but then temporarily used as the home of the ambulance service, and in addition, a building that had originally housed the Health Services Division of the Barbados Community College. The process of completion of this building for the purposes required was not without its challenges. It was some time before it was possible to release the buildings already assigned by housing to the university, and therefore not possible to carry out the works according to the original schedule. In addition, the funds available had by then proved inadequate to carry out these works and redevelop the accommodation facilities in the building just next door, which is still decrepit, as you would see. This component had therefore to be abandoned. The university is particularly grateful to the Government of Barbados, through the Ministries of Finance and Education, for guaranteeing the repayment of the commercial loan, which was based on an independent financial study conducted by Ernst & Young, and for committing to a grant of $6 million to assist in the refurbishment of the building. It is grateful, too, to the Ministries of Housing and Health in making these unused buildings at Jemmotts available for refurbishment and redevelopment for use as near as possible to their original purpose. It is particularly grateful for the timely and personal intervention of the former Minister of Health, the Honorable Donville Innes, to achieve the release to the university of this building in order for the work of refurbishment to begin. The project of the expansion of medical education in Barbados, to which this building is essential, is critical to the campus's development agenda. And our distinguished principal has been passionate in its advocacy. His erudition, too, is Catholic, and it is not irrelevant to these proceedings that he was recently appointed as a member of an advisory board which will advise the Secretary General of the United Nations and the executive heads of other UN organizations on science, technology, and innovation for sustainable development. I now invite our principal to the podium.
This 50th anniversary celebration and attending meetings of the 50th anniversary committee, we've come to realize what was already evident, even much more so, that there are some really very brilliant people who have built the KFIL campus. Some really remarkable people who have been gathered and assembled at the KFIL campus. You know, thank you, Margaret, for building our university, because I'm sure that there was some doubt in the early stages, 1963, when the Right Excellent Barrow had determined with the Vice Chancellor that there ought to be a UWI campus in Barbados. I'm sure there was some doubt about whether it would be sustainable and whether it would ever reach the status that we had expected. But thank goodness some very brilliant people took responsibility for this project over the years. And this 50th anniversary is allowing us to recognize those facts and to celebrate the stalwarts who have made KFIL into what it is, which I sometimes say, and when I say this, please don't think I'm being parochial or I am being divisive, but I believe that KFIL is as fine a campus as any in UWI. You know, yesterday I made reference to some of the distinctive achievements of the campus, and while driving in this morning I realized that we cannot make lightly of the fact that currently of the 8 PVCs in the UWI, 5 are from KFIL. That's a very significant development, Woodville. We do not take it lightly. What it suggests is that KFIL has been producing the leaders for the entire university in abundance. And we are very proud of that. And that no doubt has to do with the achievements of our stalwarts. But we are meant to celebrate and to honor the extraordinary achievements of Professor Waldron. Again, many of my colleagues of my generation who entered the university in the late 70s, we entered then, and that was 35 years ago, we entered then and found there were already stalwarts. And Mickey's reputation was already well known throughout the university, throughout the Caribbean and the world as not only a brilliant curriculum specialist, a brilliant administrator, brilliant surgeon. And yesterday we spoke about the model that in our university, the ideal model that we celebrate is when our professors are not only brilliant teachers, brilliant writers, researchers, but brilliant administrators. And we do not run from one because we're doing the other, but you have that broad, what Jackie called that Catholic responsibility. And here was Professor Waldron, brilliant academic, brilliant clinician, brilliant teacher, curriculum specialist, brilliant administrator and institution builder, and doing all of those things within one career. And normally those would be 4 or 5 separate careers, but all assembled in one person. And I believe that you do not do that without an overriding sense of passion and commitment to the many tasks at hand. You're a teacher. You want to make sure that your students understand and achieve. You're a researcher. You're a clinician. You have responsibility for building your faculty, for building your school, and you put your heart and you put your life into it. And these are the hallmarks of Professor Walrond. Few persons of that quality have passed through our university, few. And therefore, when we do see them, we celebrate them. And at Cave Hill, we have had many, many of them. So, Professor, the Cave Hill family and the wider university, and I wish to say to colleagues here who might not be aware of the university's procedures, a campus do not wake up in the morning and determine to honor someone. The campus wake up in the morning and determine to honor someone, and then we have to persuade the whole university. So we have to send those recommendations to the Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor convenes his committee, which is a naming committee. It goes for discussion. That committee is made up of people from across the campuses, and they go into deliberation, and the campus sits back and waits for the result. So it is a complete process, and when it takes place, it is an endorsement of the entire university community. That is how it is done. And sometimes we know, because at KPhil, we do not send forward names. We do not send forward names that are iffy. We do not send forward names that are maybes, and you sit and wait for the jury. We send forward names. In fact, before the meeting is taking place, we are celebrating because we send forward clear cases. And that is the nature of our proceedings at KPhil. So when we sent forward the name of Professor Waldron, we were already in a position to tell him congratulations because we know what that outcome, so respected he is across the university as a builder and a founder. And there is something I wish to say also about the development of the relationship between the university and the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the Ministry of Health. A relationship which, you know, is governed by an MOU. The public of Barbados is not often aware of the tremendous work done by the UWI within the QEH. It's one of those hidden secrets, you know, it's one of those quietly known things because we don't boast about it. But when you have someone like Mickey Waldron, who is a UWI man, but who takes responsibility for the QEH, the teaching hospital that it is, and make sure that the standard is set within our public hospital, that it is a teaching hospital, and we have UWI professors in there who are doing the surgeries and doing the work, that is something that really needs to be celebrated. And sometimes, you know, when I hear critics of UWI, and some people say, well, you know, they should close down the UWI. And I said, including the medical faculty? And when you go to the hospital for surgery, who will do it for you? Because these things are very important to us. And Mickey has been one of our leaders, our foundation members, in ensuring that we have a gold star relationship between the UWI, the QEH, and the Ministry of Health. And you would have heard just then from Jackie that these facilities, the expansion of the medical faculty, all of this is the result of the nature of that tripartite relationship. Now, I wish at this stage to pay attention and to celebrate the work of Professor Henry Fraser, who led us to this moment. Because when we had determined at KFIL that we would engage the University of the West Indies in order to expand the Faculty of Medicine at KFIL, and it was a conversation that was detailed because, again, you do not wake up in the morning and decide that you will have a Faculty of Medicine. You have to go and make a presentation to the Vice Chancellor at the Finance and General Purposes Committee. And that committee says, okay, if this is what the faculties of medicine want to do, well, let us have a business plan. And so it was determined by the Vice Chancellor that Professor Henry Fraser would consult with his colleague deans at Mona, at St. Augustine, and together they will come up with a strategic plan for the University of the West Indies. And so the Prof met with his colleague deans, the three faculties on the three campuses got together. They came to the university committee and persuaded the Vice Chancellor and the Chancellor that if the Faculty of Medicine should expand, and bear in mind that the Faculty of Medicine was expanding at Mona at quite a rate, and it was expanding at St. Augustine at quite a rate, and poor KFIL was stuck. So the decision was taken that KFIL should share in the expansion. KFIL should take its part of the responsibility for the expansion of the medical faculty, and up came the business plan. We persuaded the university. And I need to say also too, that when the Faculty of Medicine came into being at KFIL in its contemporary form, because there was an earlier form that evolved, it came into being as a commercial enterprise, unlike the faculties at Mona and St. Augustine that receive government grants. The medical faculties on the two other campuses received government grants in their development. KFIL came into being on the basis of a commercial enterprise. And that meant, therefore, that the Faculty of Medicine at KFIL had to rely upon its commercial relationships and had to be an income-generating faculty. And that is the specific nature of our faculty. It has to generate its own income in order to survive. And these buildings were the donations of the government of Barbados that have enabled us to give effect to that commercial possibility. And as you have heard from the registrar, we wish to thank the government of Barbados, Minister Ennis especially, because while we have started these conversations with Minister Jerome Walcott, when the government changed, we moved into Minister Ennis, and the conversation moved seamlessly from one to the next. And Mr. Ennis said, yes, we will honor the commitment to give you those facilities, and here we have these facilities. So finally then, I believe that this project, which has been perfectly conceived between the University of the West Indies, the government of Barbados, and the other stakeholders in the private sector who have enabled us to find the resources to invest in these developments, that we now have a medical faculty that is one of the finest in the world. And we have assembled here at KFIL a community of surgeons, a community of professors from all over the Caribbean and the world. And when you look at the list of faculty in the medical context here, it is really an extraordinary gathering of globally respected expertise brought into Barbados to deliver medical education, working with our students and working with the QEH. The potential of this project is enormous. And we can look forward to a future in which we need some strategic planners to recognize that with these expertise gathered here in Barbados under the umbrella of the Faculty of Medicine, there is room for the growth of a very positive health economy sector. I believe that this could be the beginning of major foreign exchange earning for Barbados in building a health enterprise, a health economy. And so we are going to place Professor Waldron's name at the front of this enterprise. His name will stand at the beginning of the structure, the enterprise. You will enter into this medical world. You will enter into this medical environment through Professor Waldron. And that is the responsibility that we believe that his name alone says you enter only if you are committed to excellence. If you are not committed to excellence, do not enter. Do not enter. Do not diminish that name. And that is why we have placed his name there at the front of our enterprise. Professor, we cannot thank you enough for allowing us to do this to you. Now, I wish to say one thing by way of closing. Yesterday we heard from Professor Marshall in his response. And Professor Marshall came to the podium and denied everything that we said about him. I'm asking you, please, do not deny all of the good things that we have said about you. I thank you.
Our next speaker, Professor Emeritus George Nicholson, has had a long association with Sir Errol and with the university. His distinguished career started at the Mona campus in 1970 as a lecturer at the University Hospital. In 1970, he was elevated to a personal chair as Professor of Medicine and Nephrology. KFIL campus has benefited substantially from his presence and his leadership over the 23 of the 32 years he spent with the university. His scholarship, erudition, integrity, and hard work were integral to his faculty's reputation for excellence in teaching, research, and the quality of its clinical services. Professor Nicholson.
When I first met Mickey, we were both stationed at a very distinguished institution known as Guy's Hospital in the borough of Bermondsey. One peculiar feature about that hospital was that there were 5 and possibly 6 or 7 pubs within 5 minutes walking distance from the institution, which has nothing at all to do with the sobriety or otherwise of the persons who work there. But I do believe that it was in such an institution that someone said to me, "Oh, but we were from the Caribbean. Surely you know Mickey Waldron." And I said, "No, don't know the chap." But subsequently, that was where I did meet him, actually. And I can't remember which. I can't remember which one it was. But the most memorable occasion on which we had a discussion was on one very cold, wintry night. And you know what happens in the cold winter. Most of the people who live in the area of Guy's Hospital are hard-working, hard-drinking men. Unfortunately, it had been snowing on that night, and there was a lot of snow on the ground. Unfortunately for me, I was not in my usual Saturday night establishment, but I was working in the casualty department of the Guy's Hospital. And I was very angry because there was it was past closing time, and there was this gentleman sitting on a bench who kept making remarks as I walked through. I was in a part of a three-piece suit and a white jacket, looking very official and efficient. And this guy was making rude remarks. So I went up to him and bent over and whispered. I said, "If you say one more thing about me, I will hit you so hard that your head will go through the wall behind you." And I turned on my heels and left. And I think that conversation may have been overheard by the senior sister in charge, but I was not in a good mood. Another patient had fallen over and injured himself, and it was the responsibility of the medical student on duty to take a history, do physical examination, and present the case to the casualty officer in charge, who just happened to be one Mickey Waldron. He looked at what I had written, 5 or 6 lines on the card, and said to me in a slow Barbadian drawl, 14 words. He said, "Examine a fall on the outstretched hand." Those are his precise words. I never forgot them. And they followed me, that memory followed me to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And I was very careful about how I allowed my juniors to write a referral to Mickey Walrond. I would look at it carefully and I would say, no. You can't do that. Let me show you how you write a referral letter. And several of them are written by me. And if anything went out on one of my patients' notes, it only did so unless I had carefully scrutinized it and made sure that there would be no comeback, because that would be painful for you, young man or young lady. You would not be able to live it down. But seriously, one of Mickey's characteristics is attention to detail, specificity, and a clear enunciation of what should be done and what needs to be done. And it spills over into his writing in non-medical areas. And when there's a difficult topic to discuss, a professional topic, I say to my fellow members of the BAMP Bulletin, why don't you offer this to Mickey Walrond to write? And they would say, oh, no, but he's very busy. I would say, why don't you offer this to Mickey Walrond to write? And sure enough, he has been extremely willing to support the BAMP Bulletin, and I take great care in reading what he says, because it's not what I would have written myself, but it shines with a clarity and a vision, a punctiliousness, a specificity of thought, which are all gathered into a relatively brief article, which says it all, right? As I say, in a very unique manner, and one which one can only admire and try to copy as one goes along. Those articles, those comments in the clinical notes are astounding examples of someone who has a passion for care, for clarity, and for the method of science. And I think that this establishment that the university is naming after him is very suitably and appropriately dedicated to his excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nicholson. We have heard of the extent to which this whole enterprise is the fruit of collaboration between the university and its principal stakeholders, particularly the government of Barbados. The Minister of Education, our executive ministry is the Ministry of Education. The Minister of Education would dearly have wished to have been here this morning, but he was called to national service of a higher order. Today is a meeting of cabinet, and was so frustrated in his desire, but he is ably represented here today by Mrs. Gertrude Welch, Senior Education Officer, who will speak on his behalf. Mrs. Welch.
The increase in the number of medical students at the Carefield campus has triggered a number of challenges, including the need to provide students with adequate access to classroom learning, an opportunity to practice clinical examination skills at the QEH and other clinics on the island. The creation of the Clinical Skills Lab has therefore become a logical development. A paradigm shift in modern medical education must involve the concept of user-friendly based clinical programs and awareness of costing and the aspect of managing any illness. The purpose of the Clinical Skills Lab is to develop a user-friendly application for learning the clinical skills that are at heart of every medical curriculum. It offers medical students the basic and necessary facilities to learn the essentials of clinical skills with supervised observation and the opportunity to strengthen their capability in patient encounter. Clinical skills allow our future healthcare providers the opportunity to practice and receive feedback on specific skills related to patient interviewing, physical examinations, and issues of professionalism. The ultimate goal is to prepare learner participants to be competent and compassionate physicians that provide quality, state-of-the-art patient care. The medical school is therefore responsible for ensuring that students are provided with relevant and phased early patient contact. Such experience leads to practical clinical knowledge and skills that are necessary for assuming supervised clinical responsibilities on graduation. The university's medical graduates have traditionally been held in high regard because of their high level of training in clinical skills, exemplified by the ability to examine patients, detect physical signs for diagnostic purposes, followed by the interpretation of additional studies, such as imaging laboratory studies, leading to the appropriate diagnosis of the disease. In 2009, the Carefield Campus Medical Center joined its sister campuses in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica in opening the Faculty of Medical Science Laboratory and Teaching Complex, thus introducing the first phase of the full Bachelor of Medicine and the Bachelor of Surgery to the island. Professor Sir Errol Waldron has given outstanding service to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital as a consultant surgeon and yeoman service to the Faculty of Medicine of the University of the West Indies, a medical educator extraordinaire. Professor Waldron began his career when there were few trained surgeons in Barbados. He spent approximately 40 years contributing to the progress of medicine in Barbados, writing over 100 publications of medical research on health policies and services and medical ethics. He served as Vice Dean and Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Carefield, where he expanded and improved the faculty programs. He was the first chairman of the National Advisory Committee on AIDS. I happened to be at a meeting at the Old Hilton, and Professor Warren was he was dealing with physical education teachers, and one young man got up and said, all teachers need to know the names of the children who are HIV positive or who have AIDS. And Professor Waldron very quietly walked away in his usual style. And when he came back, he said, don't you think the children need to know which teachers have it too? And I really agreed with him because I don't know why you would want to know people's status. Well, you should tell them yours too. However, one of his bits of advice to students is to make the best of what you have. It is you who make the place you live what you want it to be. Never let problems overwhelm you. It is therefore fitting and appropriate, sir, that this building be named after one of our illustrious sons. This is an honor that you deserve, and I'm sure you will treasure it for as long as you live. Before closing, I would like to give a word of advice of any students. You're destined to serve in one of the world's noble professions. You're walking in the footsteps of distinguished practitioners. Therefore, I urge you to emulate Sir Errol in adhering to the highest standard of professional ethics and technical competence. On behalf of the Minister, the staff of the Ministry of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation, I extend heartiest congratulations to all persons involved in successfully bringing this project to this stage. The Ministry of Education regards the opening of this facility to be an important factor in the institutional arrangements for training our doctors and is committed to working with the university as well as BAMP in strengthening the programs to maintain the high standards associated with the University of the West Indies. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Our Minister of Health, who has also been a partner in this enterprise, would have dearly loved to have been here, but he's, of course, has been frustrated by the same obligations as has the Minister of Education. I have already recognized, and so has the Principal, the contribution of his ministry and particularly of his predecessor to what we celebrate here today. But we are extremely delighted to have with us Ms. Dr. Joy St. John, Chief Medical Officer, who will speak on behalf of the Minister. Dr. St. John.
It is with great pleasure that I address you on behalf of the Minister of Health, Mr. John Boyce, at the official opening of the Clinical Skills Teaching Complex and the naming of the Errol Walrond building. Today's opening comes at an especially celebratory time as Barbados records its 47th year of independence and the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus its 50th anniversary. We as Caribbean and Barbadian people can be justifiably proud of the gains that we have made in health and education. These achievements have been earned through proactive planning and hard work of previous generations. We have long recognized that priority should always be given to health and education, as we are aware that a country's well-being is determined by the health and development of its most vulnerable population. Our focus on health and education has led to the development of a cadre of professionals in the medical field focused on pursuing excellence in health care. It is therefore fitting that the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, during its anniversary celebrations, recognizes the significant contribution of the Honorable Sir Errol Walrond to the medical field and names this building in his honor. Professor Walrond has fostered the evolution of undergraduate teaching, continuing medical education, and local postgraduate programs, especially in family medicine and emergency medicine, initiated in Barbados. He expanded and improved the faculty programs. He extended the clerkship program, allowing the entry of students from other UE campuses into the program, and provided more alternatives for students choosing elective courses. Graduates were also given more options for residency training in the hospitals, and the Cave Hill campus became the only UE campus that trained doctors in emergency medicine for many years. His focus on a values-centered education is of particular importance, especially in medical education, as all doctors will need to have with them the compassion, empathy, and integrity to deal with each and every patient. They will also be faced with many difficult situations where they have to exercise good judgment. Professor Waldron has not relaxed his efforts in retirement. As chairman of the Medical Council, he has led the council in the implementation of the legislative requirement for re-registration linked to continuing professional education. This thankless task has met with much opposition and at times outright anger. But he persisted, and a revolution ensued. The medical profession in Barbados, nearly all 500 plus of us have complied. The citizens of Barbados have been the true beneficiaries of his determination, for their doctors are better informed and abreast of all aspects of their profession. And Professor, I take this opportunity to thank you personally for that. Another retirement activity has been the staging of ethics seminars, which lead physicians in an exploration of scenarios with ethical implications and the best ways in which to address these happenings. The lessons learned and applied have also been of value to clinicians and their patients. In the past, doctors usually encountered and treated communicable infections like cholera, typhoid, and smallpox. Today, with rising affluence, lifestyle and chronic illnesses like heart diseases and diabetes are taking an increasing toll. There is no vaccine for obesity and heart disease, unlike for cholera, typhoid, or smallpox. Doctors cannot simply treat and cure these chronic conditions with a prescription or operation. They also have to educate and cajole patients to watch their diet, stop smoking, and exercise regularly before complications set in. The nature of healthcare provision is changing as well. We are progressively linking up our healthcare facilities to deliver integrated care. Doctors need to be part of a multidisciplinary team in order to deliver whole medicine to patients. Their roles extend beyond episodic care. They must cooperate with other medical practitioners on preventive care and aftercare and help patients navigate the increasingly sophisticated healthcare landscape. This clinical skills teaching complex will serve as a building block for a center of excellence for academic medicine. This will involve the integration of clinical services, education, and research. We are aware that many pioneering innovations, such as vaccine development and the world's first in various types of organ transplants, took place in academic medical centers, involving partnerships between medical schools and teaching hospitals. Additionally, this investment in academic medicine will yield healthcare outcomes that will bring quality treatment to Barbadians in an affordable way. Just as research is a key driver for the advancement of healthcare, the future of medicine also lies in training and nurturing the next generation of healthcare professionals. The University of the West Indies has a rich training legacy which has groomed generations of healthcare professionals. Therefore, I am pleased that the naming of this complex after Professor the Honorable Sir Errol Waldron is happening today. In so doing, his ongoing contribution to medicine and the Barbadian society has been honored. As well, this building's name will serve as a reminder of our Hippocratic Oath and of the need for respecting the hard-won scientific gains of physicians like Sir Errol, who spent a lifetime of imparting and sharing knowledge. May his legacy inspire many more physicians to follow in his footsteps. I thank you.
Today is a very, very special day for the Faculty of Medical Sciences. And as I said earlier, I think that the Dean, Professor Brandy, is really quite heartbroken that he could not be with us this morning. But he has sent his emissary, and a no better emissary, very well qualified to speak on behalf. Dr. Peter Adams, Deputy Dean of the Faculty.
Some 48 years ago, a young surgeon, yes, a young surgeon, it's difficult to, imagine, Sir Errol Young. A young surgeon, E.R. Waldron, well, for persons of my vintage, not Emeritus Professor Nicholson, returned to the Barbados, to the then new Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and some of us may also have difficulty imagining Queen Elizabeth Hospital as a new building. And you don't take that back to the Minister of Health, please. Medical education had not yet begun in Barbados, as it was not until 2 years later in 1967 that the Eastern Caribbean Medical Scheme was established. And 1967 was the same year that the College of Arts and Sciences, the forerunner of Cave Hill campus, moved from Bridgetown Harbour up the hill to Cave Hill. We had a modest start with only 6 final year medical students in the first cohort. In 1976, teaching expanded with the establishment of the School of Clinical Medicine and Research, catering to the final 2 years of the MBBS program. And its first dean was then senior lecturer, Mr. E.R. Waldron. He was soon to be promoted to professor and would become the longest serving dean at our medical school. During Professor Waldron's tenure as dean, I would have been an undergraduate medical student, arriving here in 1984 for the final 2 years of my MBBS, and then later as a postgraduate student. So I would only have known him as professor. I always marveled how everything seemed to work smoothly when Professor Waldron entered the operating theatre, and then returned to normal as soon as he left. I think Professor Waldron appeared at least blissfully unaware of this occurrence and couldn't understand what went on when he left. I was also impressed with the amount of work, or should I say overwork, being dean involved. And although I had no aspirations of an academic career at the time, concluded that being dean was not a job I would want. However, I think it's a brilliant move to put his name in the front of the building, so hopefully everything will work in the building, and everyone in the building will work hard, and with the excellent censor Sir Hilary is going to put on the door, only excellent people will enter who will work hard and everything will work. So we'll see. Now, it was also, as we noted several times, that Professor Waldron established several postgraduate programs during his tenure as dean. Fortunately, this included family medicine, my own specialty. So, of course, I'm extremely grateful for that. In 2008, after Sir Errol's retirement, the fully fledged Faculty of Medical Sciences, teaching all 5 years of the MBBS program and catering to students from around the region, was established. As part of the expansion to become a faculty, a new Faculty of Medical Sciences laboratory and teaching complex building was constructed at Cave Hill to cater to preclinical students. The old administration space under the clock tower in the Leslie Robinson building was refurbished, and the former Nightingale Nurses' Home, where we are today, was acquired. The Nightingale Nurses' Home has had a long history. In addition to providing accommodation to matrons, staff nurses, and student nurses for more than 40 years, it housed medical students. Indeed, when I first arrived here as a medical student, I lived on the top floor of the Nightingale Home. And as I said at the function a couple of weeks ago, this building was not in this luxurious state. It was when I was a medical student. And we had basic accommodation. Refurbishing the building in order to provide teaching space has also had the benefit, to quote the words of Senator Fraser, of saving an important historical cultural asset. The building is now one of the 3 flagship structures occupied by the Faculty of Medical Sciences. It caters to clinical students with 3 fully equipped skills labs, multiple seminar rooms, a just opened state-of-the-art teleconference room, a soon-to-be-opened modern library, a comfortable student lounge, excellent office space for academic and secretarial staff, this splendid room intended to be a museum until the recession hit, but now we hope to turn into a moneymaker by renting it out for events such as this. And aesthetic surroundings, all a stone's throw away from the QEH and located within a historic UNESCO World Heritage Site, historic Bridgetown and its garrison. Gone are the days when some lecturers, including myself, had no office space assigned to them and were expected to simply work out of any ward or clinic where they were seeing patients. Right here in this building, medical students now have mannequins and other equipment available to them that have pulses, blood pressures, heart sounds, breath sounds, and allow them to practice procedures such as CPR, intubation, and IV line placement. Of course, these devices weren't invented in my time, but it allows students to get practice before having to hone their skills on living persons. Thanks to the solid foundation laid by Sir Errol, K-ville has produced perhaps 1,000+ graduates over the 4 to 6 years. These graduates would have had an immense impact on the provision of healthcare on this island and beyond, as well as on the expansion of knowledge through medical research. The Faculty of Medical Sciences is therefore extremely pleased and honored that its flagship clinical building is to be named after Professor Emeritus Sir Errol Waldron. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man of the hour, our honoree, Professor Emeritus Sir Errol Waldron.
I am particularly blessed in having present today so many of you and so many former students, many of whom are now my principal treating physicians. When I'm ill, they're the ones that I have to go to. And during the time, I prepared them for this because I said, if I'm hard on you, it is because it's in my self-interest. The only concern, and it isn't a denial, that I have about the remarks made today is that when people approach the building, I will be considered a World Heritage Site. Now, of course, this day would not have been possible without the support of so many of you in this building, of course, including my dear wife. And I have no revelations to make about pre-wife times. I would like to mention in particular Mrs. Jean Whitehead, who I don't see in the audience, and Mrs. June Marshall, who is here, who kept me on the straight and narrow as I dealt with the deanship and its problems. And it would be remiss of me not to mention Cedric Allen, who was always there to do whatever small tasks there were to ensure that teaching and other activities related to students went well. He just nagged at them and made sure that everything went well. And of course, we know that what one accomplishes is not done alone. It depends so much on the fellow staff, the colleagues, not only in the medical faculty, but in the university as a whole, but also in the Faculty of Medical Sciences, the associate government staff. And it was those people who laid the foundations of the teaching program in Barbados. Now, with a faculty that is so intimately linked to government facilities, there are also those persons in government who facilitated the development of the medical teaching programs. Now, unfortunately, many of the pioneers have passed on, but almost invariably, their better halves have survived them. All right? I refer, of course, to the first Associate Dean, Dr. Harold Ford, and to my immediate predecessor, Sir Frank Ramsey, and I see Lady Ramsey is here today. I'm so glad to see you here today. And of the original associate lecturers, there was Sir Bertie Graham, and I see Lady Graham is here with us today. But there was also Sir Carlisle Burton. Why Sir Carlisle Burton? He was the PS in the Ministry of Health and Education when this all started. And in fact, it is his signature, if I remember correctly, that is on the first Memorandum of Understanding. And of course, I'm so happy to see Lady Burton here today. Sir Carlisle also served before you as chairman of the campus council. And for many years, we were able to go around in North America and we raised funds together to establish a chair in ophthalmology. But unfortunately, that fell apart in what turned out to be the aborted project in the Lions Eye Care Center. So all is never just sweet and lightness as we go on. There's sometimes setbacks. So Arnott Cato, who for many years served on the University Council, also played a part in promoting the teaching program here. He was, at the time, a visiting surgeon. I have to explain that sometimes to people, but I won't take that time today. And what is essence the chief of staff today at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The Arnott Cato Foundation, which was founded by Sir Carlisle and Lady Burton, remains a very great supporter of the faculty. And I think Sir Arnott would have raised a little smile that medical students were now officially allowed into the nurses' home. Unfortunately, I would have to let him know that the nurses no longer live here, and the students are female anyway. I also have to state that the teaching program would not have been possible without, as mentioned before, the hospital across the street. And I'm sorry that Mr. James Williams, former hospital director, could not make it today. But he was a great supporter of the teaching program, and he occasionally reminds me that we would meet in the dean's office on a Friday afternoon over a beverage. And we would discuss and hopefully solve some of his problems. And in return, he made the walls of the hospital elastic so that we could accommodate the growing teaching program. Obviously, as you heard from today, from time to time we needed the facilitation of the ministry. And I would say that over the years, there was no better friend to the faculty than the late Sir Branford Tate, and I noticed that Lady Tate is here today. And I think it is not often acknowledged that the building that houses the Avalon, that houses the Chronic Diseases Research Center, was donated for the use of the faculty by the direct intervention of Sir Branford. And I have no doubt that he and some others would have said, and it's quite incorrect, of course, that I was always trying to get into this building. Well, one denial. Now, this building, as you heard, is dedicated to clinical skills tuition. Clinical skills is the basis for the sterling reputation of the UWI medical graduate. And I have to say that one of the best students I've had, not the only, but one of the best students I've had and who had excellent clinical skills was the daughter of the registrar. You know, she's, and she gained them right here. Now, those good clinical skills that the medical graduates have allowed them to function with distinction from the lowliest of places that have no modern technology. And they've also excelled in the loftiest temples of research and modern technology. Now, this building was not unknown, as you have heard, to past medical students, and that there was even a short time when we officially housed them here. However, both poor security from the weather and the burglars from the streets around made that a slightly uncomfortable interlude. And I didn't quite remember you as one of the students in the building, but there you are. Now, the improved physical conditions and teaching facilities, which I understand are provided in this building, I want to sort of issue a warning, if not a caution. These improved facilities should not be used by the students as an excuse to be away from the patients across the streets and in the polyclinics. Good clinical skills must be grounded in reality. Stimulations of patients or systems are a very good tool in the basic preparation of a student, particularly when there are large numbers of students or when the problem is a complicated or a critical one. However, the rubber of learning medicine must hit the railroad with its imperfections, its potholes, and it must not remain in the predictable testing track of a skills laboratory. For it is facing the potholes of reality, that interaction with real people and having to deal with their imperfections and their inconsistencies that will make the students into excellent doctors. Excellence does not come from simply passing standardized examinations. And we must dedicate ourselves to continue to produce graduates with excellent clinical skills. Principal, I have no more denials except the one. And I would like to thank you for the signal honor you've paid me today. I hope that this venerable old lady of a building will weather a few more storms for the years to come, and in fact to fulfill the purpose of its original donors, that was to improve the care of patients in Barbados. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next step of this program will be the cutting of the ribbon, so we should proceed downstairs, led of course by the front row. After that, we will unveil the signage on the building.